Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Coaster, where we'll be working on a new over a little bit of the upcoming kind of recording schedule. Is I want to do the build series, Elite Dangerous episodes, but also rest between each build episode, and that way I feel a little bit fresh every time I kind of go into either of the series, and hopefully you guys will enjoy Timber and Stone as well. Now, the structure that we're working on is to kind of read about in like a novel. And down roofline and in more unique organic roofline that you might see in like fantasy novels or concept art for wizards in general, that would take a lot of parts. I did try that kind of a little bit, and you'll see that with one of our items, but to make this into a blueprint so you guys can use it in your own park, I had to kind of scrap that plan and make it a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more standard of an item here. Originally too, I wanted to have an interior, but as we go through and add detail, the interior space kind of shrinks and shrinks. You guys though are free to download the item and use it in any way that you see fit. You could probably fit a couple vendors into this and make it function just fine, or you can leave it as a decorative element and possibly have a coaster go by it or something like that. So generally though, with a building like this, it has a bunch of little layers onto it. So what I'm doing to get these layering effects is, one, we bumped out the foundation a little bit using the kind of cobblestone gray there. And then the first floor, I'm kind of making a heavier floor. This is kind of how I do most of my fantasy buildings in most games. Generally a first floor made of stone, a second, third floor made of timber and plaster. And that's generally a good formula to follow for me, just because it looks very grounded, it looks sturdy, it also looks very welcoming and home-like, just simply because it has some nice warm colors. It has a nice two-tone shift on the lower and upper floor, so that's a visual break as well. And then we're adding these little layers by making kind of a shorter mid-story and then a shorter third story. And that way it looks a little compact and really kind of crammed full of stuff inside. This is kind of my experiment into doing the custom roof line. I wanted to start with a tower, and this is actually going to be a custom peak here. Sadly, I kind of actually wasted a little bit of time trying to find the center point in those items. Kind of a shame, but I ended up working it out. Obviously, 45-degree angle from the corners will find you the center point in any square object, so that's what we had to do there. And then I established kind of the center pole. Now, the reason I can't use just a column item is simply because this is it's not quite an even grid spacing, so the pole won't actually center up on this structure. It's going to center off towards one of the corners, and we had to find the center ourselves. And then at this point, we're using thatch to match the rest of the structure. Now, thatch obviously doesn't have any default pieces that's going to work really well for us, and I have to kind of essentially build my own. Sadly, this little piece of thatch is a little hard to use simply because the rotation in the moving objects kind of points on this aren't really lined up to the planes of the object itself, right? So it's a roof tile, so it has this kind of natural angle to it that we want to get rid of and use it more like a plank. So that's kind of the struggle you have here with this, but you know, with enough kind of finicking around and slowly adjusting the angles, you can basically get it to look how you want. Adding some of these steps to kind of throw in an exposed little wooden frame like element, possibly that the thatch is laying under or over, is a pretty cool technique as well. It's a little bit of extra detail for your roof that you wouldn't normally have. And for the peak, because the thatch is too wide of an object to really get up there in a nice clean way, we just simply use one of the peaked windows from the asset list. even adding some dormer windows here along the side just to make it look a little bit more fancy. This is kind of the main fancier peak of the guild hall, so figured we could make it as fancy as we could. Also, because this is a grid and a half object, it doesn't quite center up on the building. I really should have thought probably about exactly where it was going to go and the size of it before building it, but I made it work somehow, simply by offsetting it towards the back end of the left side, and that provides another little roof line and another little layer of detail going forward. So we messed up the roof line here. Obviously you can see the center points of the building shift about halfway down. We do solve that later on by simply taking the barreled roof all the way through the structure and then branching the peaks off of there. This is a very simple, cleaner solution than what I was trying a bit ago. But now that the general shape of the structure is done, it's basically going through and detailing it all out. And the detailing part is it's where your brain kind of shuts off for me. Detailing can be fun, because this is where your building starts to just kind of shine through, but it's also kind of the more boring, repetitive section of any build for me, simply due to how I get these built. This little section here is kind of an afterthought. I wanted a little wooden kind of overhang just to add another layer of kind of interactivity on the side. And this little wooden section is just held up by some simple wooden posts. Nothing too fancy here. And given a little wooden floor, we'll go in and add actually a whole row of windows around this structure. Initially, it might look a little bit like, say, the back end of a galleon. You know how they have that captain's quarters and crew quarters area where it's basically a row of windows all the way around to give you vision, but this is obviously not a galleon and just a home. So that's kind of my inspiration for those windows going all the way around so close together. It did look a little weird, so I did flip some of them around just to expose the wood and use that as a filler piece in between some of them to break up the surface. And here, going in, adding some more of the wooden kind of Tudor style wood supports that you would see mixed into the plaster and some base windows. But as I was saying about this kind of being the area where your brain kind of shuts off, it happens to do with, I think, how I just build things in general. So I'm starting to realize that there might be two camps or two ways to go about building in Planet Coaster. There may be more, but there's two real basic ways people go about this. There is the modular way, which is a person designing a tile set off to the side and coming up with most of the bulk details initially, saving time on the repetitive nature, kind of on the forefront of the design work. And that's really great. It's almost reminiscent of, say, model building. So model builders will kind of have these kits with these predetermined objects, and you put them together in a certain way and you get a building. Very quick, very effective. I, on the other hand, see buildings more like sculptures. So what I do is I build up the base box of the shape first, and then from there I kind of sculpt away and reveal some sort of form and beauty that isn't really shown without it. And it's a lot slower than the more model maker mindset, but I think it is a still valid way to build. Some people also build like this, probably if you think tackling the details are maybe too cumbersome initially, and so you want to maybe box in the form. I think that's just the artist in me. The art school kind of, always told us to kind of box things in first and then go from there. While the other person might think of it in more of an engineering model maker kind of style, where they're just like, they need the pieces and then they build the structure out of the pieces. There's just two different ways. Something I've noticed. You guys can let me know if there's any, flaws in that theory, I guess. But back to the building. We added a dragon kind of crest over the main arched area. We're also adding some half windows and little nooks and crannies along the sides, some wrapping windows around the round elements, and a little kind of balcony area for guests to use in some sort of fashion. We'll also, of course, drag the dragon motif to the back end. Here, just adding some nice struts and heavy support beams for the roof, filling in some of the plaster area, because you don't want everything to be plastered, you don't want everything to be wooden, you want to mix and match. And I think I found a pretty good balance for this structure overall. Just a few more windows here and there with some more supporting beams, and it's basically kind of guesswork and winging it at this point. It's just coming up with some sort of interesting style, like combining two windows there to make a taller window to fit the large open surface that is the wall there, and creating a little railing out of the main kind of column supports. At this point, we'll just add some rocks along the foundation just to make it a little bit more interesting, break it up, make it look even more heavy and grounded, which is something I always enjoy doing in my builds. And we'll throw in some colors, some nice little shrubs, bushes, and flowers to kind of seal the deal. So that's it for the speed build. Let's go ahead and check it out in real time, and you guys can tell me what y'all think. Alright, so here we are with the guild, and as you can see, there's a bunch of layers, and that's really what I was going for, since doing the kind of weird broken roof line was kind of out of the question at this point. But having kind of the standard peak out front and the kind of rounded peak behind it, very interesting, especially with another normal peak here over the porch area. There's just a lot of stuff going on. We got peaks to the right, we got a peak to the left, we have dormer windows, we have sunken in windows, normal windows, windows with shutters, a green door, why not? You got things hanging on the posts, lamp posts, things like that, bushes, flowers, trees, all this wonderful little details that you would expect to see in a manor guild hall from a standard video game. You know, nothing too crazy here. That's probably any original design. It's just kind of an amalgamation of things I've seen before and things that are recognizable, you know, even adding the galleon-like windows here on the overhang that we just came up with is really cool. Kind of makes a nice wall of glass. It's almost very Japanese if you think about it, how they have walls of what am I doing? They're paper doors and things where it just kind of has this repeating pattern, and it just looks overall nice, clean, and effective. Very, very beautiful kind of object, I think. Not to hype my own build a little too much, we do have a couple little chimneys and things kind of sticking through. Added some supports across the kind of rounded style there as well. But you guys are free to use this how you see fit. You could knock out a wall, put a vendor in here, bathrooms. You could also go inside and use it as a restaurant, I'm sure. You know, it would be cool to maybe make this into a bar. You could decorate this, put some stools around that, maybe seal off this wall a little bit, or put like a bathroom entrance here just so it's usable space, but the overhang on that is kind of distracting. You can add some seating and maybe some food stalls as well. So the inside is partially usable, but it's free for you guys to use in your own parks in any way you see fit. It also reminds me a little bit of something that we built before. Let's see, where is it? We made there we go, the medieval tavern here from our Renaissance Fair Park. You can see the similarities in how I build these type of things. There we go. You know, with the stage, the covered, you know, just mixing the thatched roof with normal roofing. Now this one's maybe a little bit more fancy and stereotypical than this one, but you can see the similarities in just how I build things. Even so long ago, it just feels kind of the same. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, let me get rid of that stage. Now this looks like a wonderful picnic area. Amazing. Just deleting a structure can do that for you. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more creative goodness like this. Go ahead and hit that like button so I know you guys enjoy Planet Coaster. Leave a comment down below what you want to see built next, and let me know what you guys think of this. So until then, I'll see you guys next time.